Over the years, I purchased a lot of airbrush accessories, some of them great, some of them not so great. So this week, I wanted to go over another 5 that I just love and really help make things a little bit easier for me. And before we get started, I just want to mention this, just like all of my other videos, I purchased all of these products with my own money. So let's get started with number 5. Out of anything in this video, this is a product that I use the most. I literally use this thing every single day. This is called the Lab Genius Mini Vortex Mixer, and all it does is mix up the paint in the bottles. While I'm working on a painting, I have this sitting right next to me, and every time I reach for a new bottle of a paint mixture, I place it on top of this for a few seconds, and the paint is fully mixed, ready to go. Now, I held off on buying one of these for years just because it's not an item that's needed. Hand mixing or stirring the paint works just fine. But once you get one of these, it's really hard to go back to not having one. I've owned this one for 5 years now, and it still works just as well as it did on day one. Here's a quick example. This is a bottle of Golden High Flow that's been sitting around for a few years. You can see that all of the pigments sank to the bottom with the acrylic binder and the vehicle of water sitting on top of it. I place it on top of the mini Vortex mixer, apply a bit of pressure to get it started, and then according to this company, this unit operates at a fixed speed of 3,000 RPM. Then in about 5 to 10 seconds, this bottle of paint is fully mixed up. I found that this one is very well built, and it's actually surprisingly heavy for the small footprint, and it also has these rubber feet along the bottom to limit the vibrations. And this mini Vortex mixer does not run on batteries, it's wired, and you can see the adapter that comes in the box. So that's my number 5, the mini Vortex mixer. It's definitely a non-essential accessory, but it's one that I absolutely love. Just very happy with this purchase. Since we're already on the subject of mixing paint, moving along to number 4, this is paint storage. Like me, I'm sure that most of you guys mix your own colors and reduce your paints before adding them to the airbrush, so it's very important to have some way to save those paint mixtures. This way you don't have to remix a certain color every time you sit down to paint, but most importantly, it's a way to limit waste. You could save your paints. I use 2 different types, these small plastic containers with lids and also dropper bottles. Now these come in a bunch of different sizes, but the ones that I purchased and found most useful are the 1 ounce and 2 ounce plastic cups with lids. And then for long-term storage, I use these 1 ounce and ½ ounce dropper bottles. I always purchase these in bulk, usually packs of 50 or 100, and they last a very long time. I could reuse them if I need to. Now personally, I like to mix and reduce all of my paints outside of the airbrush. It's a personal preference. It's definitely an extra step from mixing inside the airbrush cup, but I find it so much easier to match colors, none of the paint gets wasted, and to see and adjust the viscosity of that paint. So here's a quick little example. I'm making a light blue mixture here with some cobalt blue and some white. This is called super white, and I'm reducing it with distilled water. A quick mix on the mini Vortex mixer or just mixing it by hand, and this color is ready for use now or for saving for later. I think in this small clear cup you can get a really good sense at how well this thing mixes up the paint. You can pour it into the airbrush cup like this, or what I prefer is using one of these dropper pipettes. This way I can add just a few drops into my airbrush at a time. I don't use that much paint as I'm working anyway, and I just save a lot more. When I'm working on a painting that's only going to take a day or a few days, I'll just keep the paint stored in this container. But if I'm working on a painting that's going to take a few weeks or a few months, for long-term storage, I'll just add that paint into one of these smaller dropper bottles. Most of the items on this list are what I consider non-essential accessories, meaning you don't need them. But if there's one that I think that everyone should invest in, it's some type of paint storage containers, because you're going to be surprised at how much paint you'll save. As most of you know, a good airbrush paint is not cheap. It's definitely a good investment. So if you learn to limit the wasted paint during that mixing by storing it, you're going to save a lot more money in the long run. Moving along to number 3, this is such a great cleaning tool that I made an entire video on it a month ago. These things are called paper points. These are made out of soft cotton paper rolled to a nice taper, and they work incredibly well for cleaning an airbrush nozzle. They're very absorbent and they're soft, so they're not going to damage the delicate nozzle, and they can be used to gently push out a small clog or remove any debris that might be stuck within the nozzle. As I mentioned in the full video, these are not part of my daily or monthly cleaning routine. I only use these when I'm certain that there's a clog in the nozzle and not some other issue like a problem with the paint. In my experience, a lot of times what many of us initially think is a clog is actually just dried paint on the end of the needle, which is called tip dry. So I keep on top of this just by clearing that tip dry off before it starts to become a problem. These days, I only use water-based paints with my airbrush, so I'm doing this every few minutes or so to make sure that my needle is fully cleared of dried paint. But if I tried every other method to fix the problem, which I showed in the full video, and I'm certain that there's something stuck in the nozzle, that's when I'll use the paper points. I'll let some airbrush cleaner soak within the airbrush cup for a few minutes just to help loosen anything up, and then I'll use these dry to clean out and remove any excess moisture. And the other way that I use these is to first wet one with some airbrush cleaner. This is the stuff that I use, and then I'll use that to gently clean out the nozzle, loosen up any debris or dried paint. After that, I'll switch to a new paper point, dry out the inside of the nozzle, and push out any small bits of paint. I'll have a link on the upper right hand side of the screen to my full video on these to show you the process that I use. Number 2 is a needle repair tool called the SharpenAir. I remember when these first came out, I really wanted to get one, but I was always reluctant to purchase one just because if a needle gets damaged, I still believe that the best solution is to replace it with a brand new one. But sometimes that's just not possible, especially if you own a bunch of vintage airbrushes like I do. So last summer I caved in and I finally bought one. As you can see from the sticker here, the instructions on how to use this are on their website. But to sum it up, I'll first straighten out the tip if the needle is really bent, and then I'll insert it into the first slot and rotate it clockwise about 15 rotations. Once that's done and I check it out to make sure that the tip is okay, then I move on to the next step, which is moving on to the next hole here, and I do the same thing, about 15 rotations or so clockwise. For the final step of polishing the needle, they do give you some polishing compound, which works just fine, but I found that it's much easier to get a mirror finish on it using a leather strop. Here's the shot of the needle on the left before polishing, and on the right polished with a leather strop. I actually just used this again recently on a vintage Olympus airbrush, and it does exactly what it's designed to do. It straightens the needle so you can get right back to painting. And you can check out my full video on this one when I just bought it. That's linked up above. I was able to take a damaged and bent needle from a Krios PS771 and make it look better than new. And one thing that I want to mention is that it definitely takes a bit of practice and some patience to use this tool correctly. And the best way to check to make sure that needle tip is absolutely perfect brings us to my number 1 accessory for this video, and that's the digital microscope. Unfortunately, accidents happen when you're using your airbrush. You might drop it or bump it into the surface that you're painting. And it's actually very, very easy to bend the tip of the needle, especially if you don't use the needle cap on your airbrush like me. And if you're unlucky and there was enough force, it's possible that you may have damaged or cracked the nozzle as well. So this is where the digital microscope is going to come in, and it's hands down one of the best ways to check the needle and the nozzle for damage. I got tired of trying to look for damage through a loupe, a magnifying glass, or a handheld microscope like this one. They're definitely better than nothing, but it's always a struggle to really see things clearly. So my solution was to buy a digital microscope with an LCD screen so that I could see these parts and see them clearly. Just last week, I took an older Sotar 2020 out of storage. They used to come in these black boxes, and I noticed that it just wasn't spraying that well. When I looked at that nozzle under the microscope, like I'm showing you here, I was able to see that the nozzle was damaged, so I just swapped it out with a new one, and it's working perfectly again. Now, this microscope does the job just fine. It's by no means one of the best ones you can get. You can even see the brand name is just Microscope. But if I bought another one, I'd recommend getting one with an articulating screen so you could see it looking down on your desk. These type of microscopes are often sold or marketed as coin microscopes for coin collectors. So if you take a look on Amazon or eBay, you're going to find tons of them under many different brands. I'd recommend just choosing any one that seems to be a good price or is on sale and go with that, and hopefully you don't need to use it that often. But it's so nice to have that reassurance of looking at the parts up close, because if you see a flared or a split nozzle, you know exactly what the problem is. So that's another of my 5 favorite airbrush accessories that I bought over the years. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope that this short video was helpful, and before I go, I just want to say thank you so much for the very generous support of the channel members scrolling up on the screen. I hope all of you are well. Have a great week, everyone, and I'll see you back here next Friday.